Hello everyone, Magnus here, and welcome to what will soon be my new raised bed garden. Let's take a closer look and see how these boxes are put together. The main panels of the boxes are galvanized sheet metal roofing and are connected at the corners with 4x4 lumber. For the tops, I used 1x4s to add a little support and keep the boxes square. We can head over to the garage and back a couple days in time to see the process. Please don't mind the condition of the garage. We just moved here and I haven't gotten around to fixing it up yet. Here, I'm using a chop saw to cut the 4x4s to the right length. The large boxes are about 26 inches tall, and the shorter boxes that I'm working on now are about 13 inches tall. The 4x4s are pressure treated, but about 15 to 20 years ago, lumber companies changed the chemicals they use to treat wood, and according to the US EPA, the wood treated with ACQ is safe for garden use. As you can see, while cutting these 4x4s, an awful lot of sawdust is filling the air. I'm making sure to use eye protection, as well as a dust mask. The next step is to use my table saw to cut out a groove for the sheet metal to attach. I set my rip fence and my blade height to 1 3/4 inches. After my first corner, I realized my blade depth needed a slight adjustment. That seemed to do the trick. After 2 passes along the saw, one corner of the 4x4 has been cut away to make room for the edges of the sheet metal panels. This next step was the one I had the most problems with. I never did find a good way to easily cut the sheet metal. I ended up using an angle grinder, but the cuts were never that clean, and stupid me, I forgot to put my dust mask back on. Always wear a mask when dealing with galvanized steel. Now it's time to screw the panels to the corners. Here, I'm measuring the distance between the corners to make sure they're even. I'm using self-tapping roofing screws with washers to securely fasten the sheet metal to the wood. Though the screws are self-tapping, I did pre-drill most of the holes in the metal to make it a little easier on myself. Here's one of the 4-foot panels for one of the larger boxes. I now need to add the shorter 2-foot metal panels on the other side of the 4x4 corner blocks at either end of the longer panel. This part can take a little bit of trial and error, especially if you make uneven sheet metal cuts like I did. I made these boxes by myself, but if you are working together with someone else, you might find the assembly is much easier with an extra set of hands. I started with the 4 corners, so I could make small adjustments when needed. The important part here is to make sure the 4 corners are even and square when screwing the panels into place. Once I have the end panels on one side, I can add the other side. Once again, this part of the assembly would be much easier with an extra set of hands. I am aiming for 29 inches across. Here, I'm measuring the corners of the short side to make sure it's 29 inches, so I can keep it even with the other side. The final pieces that need to be cut are the caps. In order to fit the pieces together neatly, I need to cut the ends of the 1x4 boards at a 45-degree angle miter cut, which I can do with a quick adjustment of my chop saw. After cutting one end at a 45-degree angle, I need to measure the full length of the box to determine where the other angle cut will go. Keep in mind, boards have to be flipped to make sure the angle cut is facing the right direction, and always measure from the far end of the angle cut, not the close end, or you'll end up with a board that's too short. Measure twice, cut once. Here I'm using a speed square as a visual guide to make sure the saw blade is where I want it before I make the cut. These 1x4s are secured to the corner blocks with either wood screws or deck screws. They function as a cover for the exposed sheet metal and as a bracing to keep the boxes squared and sturdy. I measure both diagonals to assure they're the same length. If my sides are the same and my diagonals are the same, then my box is square. With the long caps in place and my box square, I measure the remaining gap between the two long boards to figure out how long the short boards need to be. If I did everything right, they should be about 29 inches. And they should fit nicely in place. With the finishing touches being done, it's time to prepare the ground where they need to go so they can sit nice and level. Ground leveling is done easily enough with a shovel and a metal rake. You can also use rocks as shims under the corners. As the ground settles, you'll likely have to make minor adjustments to keep the four corners level every year. Thank you very much for joining me on this project. I hope this video helps inspire you to make your own raised garden beds. Please feel free to add any comments, questions, or suggestions you might have. And please give a like to the video if you enjoyed it. And subscribe if you want to see more content. You may have noticed the beds are already half full with logs, sticks, and leaves. And I plan to do a follow-up video explaining how I filled my garden boxes and what I ended up growing. Look forward to that coming out later this year. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.